Hello, I'm John Donatich, the director of Yale University Press, and it is a special honor and privilege to be invited to join you this evening to honor the incomparable poet Kiki Damula. I only wish it could be in person, but we shall have to be satisfied with telegraphic communication across land, sea, and language, a kind of translation in and of itself, in order to say that it has long been a personal career goal for me and for others at Yale University Press to be part of an international literary community, one that would bring to light and promote neglected works of literary distinction from around the world to an English-speaking audience. To be successful, the program would have to have great ambition and, just as importantly, patience. The deficit of literary translation in the English-speaking world is a fact of some notoriety and not a little bit of shame. 3%. That is the much ballyhooed percentage of translated books published in America every year. To me, there's something deliberate about our ignorance, a willful naivete that must be read as a kind of arrogance. It is almost as if we did not want to know the cultures we compete with, as if discovering their humanity would cost too much. It's not a good situation, and it is something we at Yale have begun to address in partnership with Cecile and Ted Margellos and our series, The World Republic of Letters. We closed the last century with a review of horror, wars, genocides, terror. We began a new century with the reprisal of the very same elements. We find ourselves misunderstood in a world we have taken precious little time to understand. Where can we turn to for guidance and insight? Where can we learn the values of the cultures with whom we are in disagreement with, or worse? What source can describe for us the terrible confusion of our times, as well as clarify the kind of world we want to live in, but literature? For centuries, rigid systems fought each other, proselytizing their truths, trumpeting their superiority over other versions, and propagating violence to legitimize their theories. Ideology has buried generations of faceless individuals. People of the word, those who would free language from corrupting ideologies, believe that we can still invent common values that appeal to the best in us. Put simply, we can read what the other is writing. We can try to understand and integrate this foreign element into our symbolic universe. We can tell more complex stories about ourselves by considering the vision of those who are different from ourselves. We can wake up from our compassion fatigue by meeting foreign people in their literature, confirming their humanity, and correcting our ignorance. Here is a very small but nonetheless important fact. Last year, some 200,000 books were published in the United States. Guess how many of those were translations from other languages? Only 3% of the publishing activity in the English-speaking world. On the other hand, in many countries in Europe, more than half of the books published are translated from other languages. That is significant. It is also confounding and should inspire us to rectify the situation. It is further evidence that those who accuse the U.S. of a kind of myopic arrogance may indeed have a point. We aim to prove that market, critical, cultural, and economic conditions need not be hostile to translations. We have a moral obligation to find the next Kafka, the next Proust, the next Dostoevsky, and bring them to English readers. I am so grateful to Cecile and Theodore Margellos for funding our new literary experiment, The World Republic of Letters, a cooperative venture of readers, writers, and publishers across the world in order to bring to the world's attention neglected works of literary genius from various cultures and traditions across the ages. We aim to bring to a general readership the leading poets, novelists, essayists, philosophers, and playwrights from Europe, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East to stimulate a true renaissance of artistic voices engaged in an international dialogue, a concert of individual voices that will speak for themselves, emerging from the clinical language we hear daily from G8 summits and WTO meetings. While our program may be still small, our ambition is big. Each book potentially is an introduction of a new sensibility to an open mind. When we encounter another imagination, the mind expands. This is the true nature of the globalized citizen, the people's globalization, the ability to recognize each and believe in the best possible versions of each other. This was originally Ted and Cecile's idea, a series conceived in 2007 and began publishing in 2009. To date, we've signed over 50 prestigious writers, novelists, poets, representing 19 languages, and have published such notables as the poet Adonis, the Romanian novelist Norman Manier, the Pole Witold Gombrowicz, the Frenchman Pierre Michon and Yves Bonfoy, and dozens of others. Our aim is to publish between 5 and 8 books annually and to have those books noticed by an international audience. So far, the response has been extremely gratifying. Witness the front page profile of our honored guest, Kiki Dumula, in the International Herald Tribune and New York Times early in January. There are some people who think that translation is the impossible art. Our own Robert Frost said that poetry is what gets lost in translation. I would counter by saying that what constitutes poetry is exactly what survives in translation. What is specific about a human voice in all its uniqueness, in all its resistance against the pressure to be ordinary, that is exactly what can be heard in translation when done well. To read Kiki Dumula is to be at once transported into an ethereal sense of cause and effect, just as much as it is to be grounded in relational terms, whether it be your feet on the soil, your memories in time, or your place within a family structure, both intimate and cosmic. Put simply, the poems are a revelation, quick and lapidary with completely unpredictable metrics. The reading mind is both metaphorical and cumulative. When reading a new poet, one must first defend against the threat of surprise and confusion and delight by thinking of other poets one has already read. On discovering Dumula the first time, I instantly thought of our own American Sphinx, Emily Dickinson. I thought not only of Wisława Szymborska, but also of Kay Ryan, our wonderful American poet of the uncanny and beguiling. I hear echoes of the metaphysical poets in the tradition of George Herbert and John Donne. Kiki's poems have a formal invention and an intriguing unheaviness that delight. Though often dealing with abstraction, they give a visual texture to this verbal art, short lines that release in a single burst but do not take off, remaining there mixed, heavy, disabled, like fireworks that go off in one's hand. Consider the poem Biographical Picture, in which logic and luck have the dynamics of a spasm. Listen to its beautiful internal rhymes, even or especially in English. Are there seas, nervous ships that push solutions toward unhindrance? It's masterly work. I feel myself falling off the line breaks. She also works with lovely traditions like the marble statue, an identification mark, the marble faun, a kind of Pygmalion lost, the drama of a form's will to escape itself, which is a dynamic in the work over and over, the use of refrains as shackles, or the line, "To you suddenly I appeal in my last body," an elegiac instinct for what lasts and what gets lost. I always confuse whatever happened prior to my existence with as if it didn't happen. After we cease to exist, mark my words, my confusion will prove prophetic. Listen to the wonderful irony of "mark my words" with the knowledge that this is her legacy, fleeting as it may be. Again, the will for form to obliterate itself, to feed on itself even, the fire and the ash. I also love the savagery of a line like, "You will see that the lethal side effects of a small dose of love are exactly the same as those of a large one." That line has me spinning. How then are we to live and love? I could say that I am at a distinct disadvantage being only able to read Kiki in her English translations. And this is where I get to gush at the wonderful work of the translators Cecile Margellos and Rika Lesser. Much survives here and much is newly made. I believe our distinguished translators are doing the work of angels. The word "to translate" in theology means to convey directly to heaven without death. And that seems to me an apt description of the purest ambition of translation and the communion between the original writer, his or her interpreter, and most importantly, you and me, their reader. So hats off to Ted Margellos for having the idea for the series. Hats off to Rika and Cecile for putting it into practice so splendidly. And all of our hats off to Greece's national poet, Kiki Dumula. She is now the world's poet. Thank you.